I'm talking to my wife Tiqvah today about her journey as a mother. Tiqvah and I go a long way back. We've known each other 37 years and
Yeah.
we've been married 14 years almost. And so it's been a several wonderful years with my amazing wife. And so, yeah, with all that said, I'm going to leave as much time as we have for me to ask Tiqvah questions. And if you guys have questions as well, I'd encourage you to please leave them for a little later so I can keep track of all the questions. I don't want to miss out on any questions that you guys ask. So stay engaged, listen throughout. I might take some questions as they come from the feed, but I will ask and request all of you to try and keep the questions for later so I don't miss out on any of them. Right. So, Tiqvah, tell me, why did you choose to become a mother? What prompted that decision?
Yeah, I honestly don't think I really chose to become a mother. I think growing up, I really loved being around kids. I was in a large family, and there was always I think just very unconsciously that thing of, oh, you get married, you have kids. The life, that's what is expected. Um,
Right.
and so when we got married, like it wasn't like something where I was just like, okay, do I want to have kids? But honestly, I do think that this is a question that people need to be deliberate about. Um, just in hindsight, for my own life and from interactions with others, I've seen that being or choosing to be a parent needs to be deliberate, just like anything else that we do in life. Um, so if you're a person who is having a child on your own, obviously you've answered this for yourself that you do want to have a child. But for everyone else who is considering having a child along with a partner or a spouse, like I would encourage you, like, do ask yourself, like, do we want this? Because it's possible that your partner isn't really keen on having a kid. And I'm not making an assumption here that it is the man. It can very often be the woman in the relationship who's saying, I don't want to have children.
That's
Uh,
right.
you need to actually ask yourself that question and work out the why and be together in the final decision. And the other part in is also to make the choice is, can we have children? Because with having a child, for women, there are physical changes to their body. Are they okay with that? Um, for I know from our own experience, because we were struggling with conceiving naturally, one of the questions we had to ask ourselves is, would we be happy to adopt? And at that time, I know Adarsh was not really sure whether he was okay with adopting a child, because he wasn't sure if he could love the child just like he would a biological child. So it was important for us
Yeah.
to be deliberate in that choice and asking ourselves that question.
Yeah. Thanks for that. For those of you just joining, Tiqvah just talked about why she chose to became a mother, or um, why she made the decision and how she went about it and what she was thinking about. I'm going to ask you now, Tiqvah. You didn't actively choose to become a mother, but what else did you consider before embarking on that journey?
Um, I think another big thing is, when do I want to have a baby? Um, Honestly, a lot of times when people think about having kids, they're thinking about the factors around financially. Am I ready to have a baby? Obviously, physically, are we together to be able to make a baby? For those who need assisted pregnancies, like, when is the treatment available? Like, am I on a waiting list? Things like that. But we often overlook the part about being ready as a team. This is like for those who are in a relationship with a spouse or a partner. Because having a baby does take its toll on any relationship. It like the baby will compete for your time. There are financial implications. There's like plans can change because of a baby coming into the equation. And so it's important to invest in building the relationship between you and your spouse or your partner. And when I say invest in the relationship, really that focus on building trust.
Yeah.
Because when the baby comes and the relationship is being tested by financial difficulty or the plans that you had for yourselves as a couple now needing to be altered, having that trust in each other is really important to be able to push through those challenging times. Um,
Absolutely.
and I know for Adarsh and myself, we had actually planned that for 2 years, we're just going to be us and really get to know each other. Like we'd known each other for several years before that. We'd known each other since we were 2.5. But when we got married and actually living together, it was a completely other ball game in terms of learning to live together, trust each other completely. And so finally, after those 2 years of like feeling in a better place, and we started trying to have a baby, things didn't go to plan. Um, I had multiple miscarriages. Our relationship was definitely tested. My own emotional well-being, because obviously when we were trying to have a baby, the whole act of sex, which is supposed to be a pleasurable, intimate experience, became a chore, a task, and an extremely stressful one, because every time I would hope that I was pregnant and then be disappointed. And so I would go on this emotional roller coaster. It was like a whole year and a half. And so it also meant that I needed to get help. Like we did reach out to some people who were close to us to help us get through some of those testing times in our relationship with each other. And obviously at the end of it, there was a great reward. But yeah, like coming back to your question, what was the other thing that I would have considered? I think the when of having a baby, to know what it is that you have invested in your relationship, and the part of it may not go according to plan. So yes, 2 years done, we're ready to have a baby. That 2 years may become 4 years, like it did in our case.
That's so true. Absolutely. And like Amu Shubha, it says so well, the dreaded 2 week wait, which is so true. That's something that all parents or all aspirational parents uh, can relate to.
Totally.
So you subsequently had a child, and then you chose to become, I'm fumbling with my words, a stay-at-home mom. So why did you make that choice? Why did you choose to become a stay-at-home mom?
Yeah. Actually, my career was on a great trajectory. I had every intent of returning to work as soon as I could. Like I stayed at work until the last possible day. Um, and like I was like, as soon as I'm done with breastfeeding, I'll be back in the office. I've got this. Um, but when Maria was born, it was just like I was smitten. I I saw her and I fell in love with her. And so then in our discussions, as we were thinking through, okay, so do we need to hire help so that I can return to work? Just the thought of someone else being the one to nurture my child just was not something that sat well with me. It's like I
Yeah,
brought this world. Uh, I'm in love with her. I want to be the one who shapes her experiences, and as a result, the personality that develops. I don't want someone else to be doing that for me. So that
yeah,
made the decision for me very, very like, no, I'm going to stay at home and I'm going to be the one that raises her.
right. Um, so I know you to be a perfectionist. I mean, I've lived with you long enough, and I've known you a long time, and you're this total perfectionist. You settle for nothing less than excellence, and you always demand that in all that you do. So what was it like? How did your parenting style evolve, and how did you become or choose to become or work on becoming the best mom that you could be?
Uh, the perfectionist like in my case, manifest as control freak, cleanliness freak, like just freak. And so what that meant for me as a mother was twofold. That I was constantly frustrated that things were not going my way, because obviously with a small child, there's tons of mess. things don't go to plan because she didn't want to sleep at the time when we thought she was going to sleep, or uh, things never were in my control fully. So I was constantly in this frustrated mode. And it also had the other side effect of it was that my child was becoming stifled in what she could do, because I was constantly like, oh, no, 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 don't do this because it'll, like, the paint will go all over. Or, oh, no, no, don't feed yourself because the food will fall all over. And I had to learn to be okay with everything not being okay. So I had to just let go and say, hey, the room is going to become messy, but that's fine. I will clean it up later. It's more work, but in
Yeah,
this, I'm allowing my child to develop. I'm allowing her to be creative. I'm allowing myself to be more at peace and control in my emotions. And that allowed me to be a better mom. Uh,
great.
Another aspect, I think, to that evolution was, like, I had great examples in my parents of the great things to do in being a parent, but also what not to do. Um, but one thing that I think I took away from a good to do was teamwork between my mom and my dad. And so just I needed to remember for myself that being a parent is not something that I'm doing on my own. I'm doing it with my husband. We are a team. We're in this together. And so a simple thing, like when I came back from the hospital with Mireya, I had just had a C-section. I took some time to recover, and Adarsh would bathe her. Now, the perfectionist that I am, I'll be like, oh, this is how it should be done. Or I would, even if it was that I was letting him do it, but I'm just there constantly like hovering and saying, like, maybe do this, do that. And then I had to just tell myself, hey, we're in this together. Let go. Let him do it. He is the parent. He loves this child. He is not going to do something to hurt her. So I'm going to go and actually grab this time to sleep, because actually after her bath, she's going to sleep a good 2 hours. So I'm going to grab that 2.5 hours to sleep, get myself some rest, and I can be a better mom, not a grouchy, sleep deprived mom when I wake up. So that was another space of evolution. And I think the third big area of evolution for me was this driving factor of I want to raise my child to be confident with understanding. And by that I mean, like, to be confident but not a dictator, where the child drives everything that's happening and controls the situation. Um, and a large part of this came actually from a book that a series of books that I had read. It's called the Baby Wise series by Gary Izzo and Robert Bucknam. And there was this phrase in there which said, start like you mean to go on. And it taught me a great lesson, because I had seen in a lot of my friends how they really struggled with their children in terms of feeding, eating habits or sleeping habits. And a classic one, like with the eating, with Mireya, like if she didn't like something that I had served her, it would be crying, and then that crying evolved into vomiting. And there were times when
Right.
I was tempted to just be like, okay, fine, I'll give you something else, because otherwise this is going to take me forever. But I knew if I said that, I will then give it, that giving in will lead to another time of giving in and another time of giving in. Or if you eat this, I'll give you a chocolate. So does that mean that every time she doesn't like something, I'm going to bribe her with, I'll give you a chocolate so that you will do what I'm asking you to do? So just that building that habit of allowing my child to have freedom, but with understanding, and building the right habits. So just that I needed to, it was almost like a battle of the wills, that I needed to will myself to say, I'm not going to give in here. I'm going to stick it out, because I want to be able to continue this habit. If I give in this time, I'll have to do it again and again, and I can't sustain that. For those of us who are working, we have this principle, like, set the right expectations. Like if you're going to work on weekends, everyone's going to expect you to work on every weekend. Do you want that? So similarly with parenting, um, am I going to bribe my child this one time to do this? Because then I'll have to bribe them every other time. And I think that has definitely helped me be the best mom that I can be, because now I do have children who are confident but not dictators of how things are run around the home.
Awesome. Great. For those of you just joining, Tiqvah just walked us through why she chose to become a mother. So that was the first part that we talked about. And now she just told us about how she has evolved over the years to be, or to set herself up to be the best mom that she can be, in terms of the way she goes about interacting with the children and setting expectations with her children, all those sorts of things. Um, Getting used to being referred to in third person quite a bit today on this chat, because whenever she says Adarsh, that means me. I'm the Adarsh that she's referring to. So it's nice. It's interesting to be referred to in third person on the same live. Anyway, yes, for those of you who just asked, this will be saved to IGTV and on YouTube. And I will open this up for questions right towards the end. We have about 12 minutes or more, depending on how things go. So, Tik, we just spoke about how your style as a mom has evolved over time, and how you've set yourself up to be the best mom that you can be. All the various things that you use in your style. So you were a stay-at-home mom for a while, and then you transitioned back to work. How did you make that transition back to work?
Um, it was a journey. So actually, 5 years to this yesterday on my birthday. Over a couple of drinks, Adarsh and I were just talking about what it was that I was looking forward to in the year ahead, like we do on every birthday. And I I was at that point really frustrated with the fact that all my interactions with the world were very much in one dimension, and that was the dimension of my role as mother. And I just felt like I wasn't feeling completely fulfilled as a person, because I was like, there is so much more to me as a person. I have so many other skills that I'm just not using here. And as a result, my confidence in those skills started waning, because I'm like, I've just not used them. I don't know if I can anymore. My confidence as a person started dropping, because, like, being completely honest, once you have a child, when you enter the room, everyone's like, oh, yeah, so cute. And I'm like, hello, I'm here. Say hello to me too. I exist. Um,
Yeah,
and like, I know it sounds like I'm trying to, like, I was jealous of the attention, but that's not what it is. What I'm trying to say is just there is that element of you start becoming invisible because your child takes center stage. And that was not good for me. I needed to be able to be complete and feel complete. And so just this, I kind of felt like I was being pigeonholed into mom. Every
right.
conversation was, oh, so what words is she saying? Or what is the color of her poop? And I'm just like, guys, come on, like, talk to me about something else. So it was that conversation that we had 5 years ago, which really made me think about what it is that I needed for me so that I could be a good mom, because I had reached the point where I was a frustrated mom. I
Yeah,
loved being a parent, I loved mothering my child, but I realized that being a mother was not my identity. It was one part of it. It was a role that I played. I'm also a sister. I'm also a wife. I'm also a control freak. I'm also an animated storyteller. There's so much to me. I'm an operations manager. And so 2 months on, I joined Facebook. And it just felt like it was this new phase of life for me, a renewed sense of ambition, of energy. And what allowed me to make that transition, I think the best part of it was the teamwork that I had with my husband, in that he was running a business, and we discussed this together and said, okay, he was going to take the lead on running the home and looking after Mireya, like the school runs and things like that, so that
yeah,
I focus on really immersing myself in my work, building my confidence again, and figuring out what it is that will bring me back to feeling completely fulfilled with my life. Another part of the teamwork is the friends that we had, friends like family who helped us when I was traveling on business, to just mix things up for Maria and call her over for sleepovers. That just allowed me to not keep thinking, oh, being a mother, I should hold back. Like, I can't just leave my family and go. Like, I have a husband who knows how to take care of our child. I shouldn't have to worry. I mean, it would have been a problem if we weren't in it together right from the start. And then you had to figure out how to feed our child or how to bathe our child. But we were in it together. And I think that for me was the biggest facilitator of my transition from being a mom who was at home all the time to a mom who was now going out to work with other people. And another thing I think over here to call out over here is that, like with anything in life, there are phases to it. And so thinking back even to the first time when we took the decision for me to stay at home, there it wasn't like, okay, it is my turn to stay at home and look after the child while you work, and now the second child. It's not about turns and things like that. It's about, we're in this together. What is it that we need for us as a family right now? And when I us as a family, there are the financial aspects, but there's also the emotional aspects of what that we need as a family, so that I can be well in my mind, so that I can be the loving and care that I want to be to my husband, so that I can be the energetic, fun mother that I want to be to my children. I can be the engaged, interested person that I want to be with my friends. So there's so many, that teamwork, I think, is what really allowed me to make that transition back to work, because that was what I needed for me.
That was lovely. Powerful. Thanks. Thanks for that. For those of you just joining, Tiqvah has just walked us through why she chose to become a mom, to become a mom, and the initial few years as a stay-at-home mom, and then how she made the transition, how and why she made the transition back to work. And if you missed all of what she said so far, it will be on YouTube and in IGTV. But we still have a little bit more. I have one more question, and we have some time for your questions. So you've spoken about why you chose to be a stay-at-home mom for a while, and why you made the transition back to work. But then you had a second child, and then at that point, you didn't choose to go back to work. I mean, sorry, to be a stay-at-home mom. You chose to stay at work. So what was that thought process like, and why did you make that choice at the time?
Yeah. Like, first off, I want to make a statement here before I try answering your question. Like, in society, we've saying full-time mom to stay-at-home mom, because we're recognized that there is no on-off to being a parent. Like, you are a parent once you have a child. And so the concept of, oh, am I a full-time mom? I am full-time. Whether I'm working with other people or at home, I am full-time a mom. Similarly, we should make that shift in our use of the term of working mom as well, because honestly, being a mom is work. It's hard work.
Absolutely.
It's just, I'm working different kinds of work, using different kinds of skills with different sets of people. So like today, as I was preparing for this conversation, I was also, like, when I was sharing a message with people on my friends on Facebook, I was going to say my journey becoming a mom. And then I also said working mom. And then I was just like, actually, I don't want to say that. I want to say working outside the home mom, because I am working even at home. It's just a different setting, but it has implications on my family. So, sorry, that was my statement that I wanted to just put there. But coming to your question on, like, why did I choose not to stay at home the second time round? I think there's a little bit more context that I want to give before talking about that. And that's really what I mentioned a little bit earlier, that I, about 5 years ago, I was really frustrated as a mother because I felt not fully fulfilled. But also there was the huge element of an emotional trauma that I had been through of trying to have a second child for almost 4 years. Um, and like we talked about it earlier, and Namu mentioned that 2 week wait, like doing that for years, took its
Yeah.
toll on me. It made me extremely cynical person. It made me question my faith. It affected my relationships with people, particularly my husband. It took the joy out of sex. There was just so much negativity around wanting to have another child, which is supposed to be a beautiful thing because I loved being a parent. That that conversation that we had on my birthday was a turning point for us as a husband and wife to say, okay, we're not going to keep trying to have another child. And I said, closing that chapter of my life, moving on. I'm going to now, like, we're not going to keep trying to have another child. We
Mm-hmm.
gave away a lot of the things that we had kept in the hope of having another child. And I was like, okay, getting back to the workforce. That's when I applied for that role at Facebook 2 months later, and I started working with Facebook. So there was that emotional journey as well of not having a second child that I had to put to rest, along
Right.
that emotional journey of the frustration of just being like feeling like I was pigeonholed into my role as mother. So there were those two things at the back of my head when we had this surprise, unexpected pregnancy 6 months into my job at Facebook. And I was just like, no! Like, I was trying to have a baby for 4 years and it didn't happen. And now this, like, really, um, it was, I was not a happy person because to me, having another baby at that point, I was just like, come on, I've dealt with that emotional drama. I don't want to go into it again. Like,
Yeah.
it's done. And besides, I'm really enjoying what I'm doing. I loved my role at Facebook. And I was afraid that if I was to have another baby, it meant that I would have to slow down. So I just didn't want to have that baby. But I was pregnant, decided to go ahead with the pregnancy. But when Aiden was born, and again, he was born under some difficult circumstances, he was born 2 months premature. I just didn't feel an emotional connect with him. So it was completely different from my experience with Mireya, where when she was born, I was besotted. I was just like, oh, I feel complete.
Mm-hmm.
With Aiden, I was just like, oh, I don't want this baby. So it did mean that my husband had to step in to compensate for my lack of affection with my baby, to do that nurturing and caring, which I wasn't able to do over and above what he was already doing as a partner in this team under normal circumstances. So he was pretty much doing everything for our baby apart from breastfeeding because he couldn't physically do that. Um, but I I think that was really the key factor in saying for my well-being, I needed to continue to work in an environment that allowed me to use the skills that I wouldn't have been able to use if I went back to staying at home and dedicating my time to raising our children. So it meant that I did go back to uh, being leaving the home 4 months after Aiden was born. It wasn't easy because this kid had digestion issues. He just needed more care, and my husband was still running a business, and so it meant that he had to take even more of like slow down a lot more than he already had done when we made the decision for me to move back to working with just Mireya. Now Adarsh was
Yeah.
after Mireya and Aiden, a newborn baby, while I went back to leaving the house every morning, coming back, calls late in the night. Um, but like we were able to make it work again because of our teamwork. We knew why we made that decision, a large part of it being because that was what I needed for me. I didn't want to go back into that negative spiral of being a frustrated parent, but I wanted to continue to enjoy parenting, and give myself the space to figure out how I was going to love this baby who I didn't really want because of all that I had been through before, while trying to have a second child. Um, Another part of the success there was in the army of people I had around me who just loved on us. Like
Yeah.
I can give you is, Adarsh, you'll remember this. Like Adarsh had a business meeting multiple times actually, where he had to just run for a meeting where a client would be like, I need to meet you in the next 2 hours. So he would dress Aiden, come and drop him off in the office and say, I'll be back in an hour and a half. And I'm just like, I'm just about to go into a one-on-one. Like, what do I have to do? And I had people on my team, people from the wider group in the office who would be like, Tiqvah, just don't worry, just give me the baby. I'll sort it out. You go. And I would carry on. Like I had one-on-ones with my manager with Aiden as a baby on the floor while I'm on the VC in that meeting room. And my manager was like, I can hear some, like, is there a baby somewhere in the building? Like, I was like, yeah, my son's on the floor. And I took towards him. But we were able to make it work because the people around us came around us to support us and loved on us and gave
Absolutely.
room to be able to work through that time. But I am so thankful for it because if I wasn't able to go back to that work, it would have left a void in me, which would have been difficult for me to recover from. I needed that. Yeah, so that was the decision or the need that we had at that time, and it worked for us at that time. And you can see it was so different from what we needed for us and what we chose for us with our first child. So like I think with parenting, there's never any absolutes. There's never any like it's either this or that. It's a constant evolving because of what life is. It evolves, the things change, and we've got to evolve with it.
Absolutely. That was really powerful, and thanks for reminding me of all that, those amazing stories. Um, so Tika just walked us through, over the past 30 minutes or so, why she chose to become a mother, and how she embarked on the journey, how her style of motherhood has evolved over the years, why she chose to go back to work, and why she chose to stay at work when she had her second child. And all of that will be on YouTube and on IGTV soon if you've missed out on all that she said so far. But now I'd like you to Dick, thanks for saying all that you said so far. But all of you who have questions, if you have questions, feel free to share them right now, and Dick will answer them in the next 9 or 10 minutes that we have before we go off live.
I can see someone has
Priya,
found how.
yeah. So Priyanka asks, how did moving affect your journey as a parent?
It's been an adventure like anything else. We, as parents, we have always wanted to be able to live in a different environment. And a large part of it is because we feel like living in with different cultures allows our children to learn what it means to adapt. And so we embraced the move from India to Ireland, even though it was at probably the worst time possible. We had just had an accident, and it was physically very difficult. But we embraced it because we wanted to give our children that opportunity to learn to adapt to a new environment. What it meant for me in terms of parenting was being able to open my mind to the fact that I will have to learn to adapt to a new culture. I will have to learn a lot more to stay relevant rather than just relying on what I always knew. um, like an example of that is just like even about talking about homosexuality. It's not something that's discussed very openly or freely in India, while in Ireland it's something that is discussed very often, and it's seen very often. And coming from a Christian home, it meant that I had certain preconceived notions about what was acceptable and what was not.
Right.
So it made me confront my own personal convictions about some of these things, and really discuss it with my husband for us to be aligned on how we want to be able to have these conversations with our children, how we want to be able to encourage them to view people who have a different lifestyle without judgment, how to love them like we would anyone else. So that's just one example of how we've had to evolve in our parenting because of being in a different culture.
Great. You summarize it really well. Veda asks, what do you like most about being a mother? What do you love the most about being a mother? Life doesn't do it justice.
That I am loved unconditionally. Like children are so forgiving in how they love. Um, like there are days when I can be so irritable and so controlling, snapping because I'm just not having a good day, and they will still love on me. They will still, like, they will be apologetic for annoying me. And I'm so thankful to be able to receive such love, because then it's also a reminder that, hey, like they are loving me despite me. I've got to, I need to think about what I'm doing. And it just helps me change my mindset. It helps me change my attitude and snap out of that negative mind frame. Yeah. So it's a bit of a selfish one, but that's what I love the most, the unconditional loving.
Great. We have about 5 minutes more technically, but we might just go on based on how many questions are asked. Maria, who is a third culture kid, asks, "What's it like raising third culture kids?" Sending love from a third culture kid myself is what she says. So, what's it like raising third culture kids?
Um, so much unknown. I like I alluded to earlier. It's a lot more involved, or like it does require a lot more deliberate action on my part to be able to understand the context in which my children are, not my personal experience.
Yeah,
And so I need to really spend time to pick up on the non-verbal cues. I need to be able to just be there and be completely approachable. Like, obviously, my daughter is still quite young, she's 9, but she's already interacting with the world very deeply on certain things, which, like, I never had those conversations with my parents when I was that age. So I'm having to really be creative in trying to understand what those dynamics are when she's playing football with the boys, and how she feels she's being perceived, versus how she wants to dress when she's going for a play date with other girlfriends and what they're talking about.
yeah,
So it's right now, I think it's still a little early. I'm not feeling that part as much. But I know this, I'm consciously thinking about how do I make sure I stay relevant? How do I make sure I stay approachable? Really upping my game on listening, because I want my daughter to be able to trust me and be able to talk to me about what she's feeling as she's going through these cultural shifts. and developing her own identity in this different culture.
Right. I didn't expect that. I love that handle. Ask, what's the hardest part about facing fertility problems?
It's to be at peace. It was about being at peace within myself. I i didn't i didn't but in hindsight, I think that's what I thought I failed at, because I just didn't know to look at it that way.
Hmm.
Because my identity became so enveloped with this thing of, but I have to be a mother. Like, how can I not? Like, what's wrong with me? That was what my body was made to do, to be able to bear children. And how can I not? And so being able to dissociate my identity from that experience or that physical attribute was, I think, the hardest part for me. I did not do it successfully. But in hindsight, I wish I did. And it meant that I would have needed to get professional help to do that. Like, I'm able to say this now because I've received professional help in the last few years for other aspects of my life, where I began to discover it was the fact that I was confusing my identity with my roles, and that was what was weighing me down. And I wish I had that help in the early days of my fertility struggles. Um, I think another part that a lot of people find really difficult is the societal pressure. Like, there are certain expectations in society. Thankfully, I had a husband who was with me 100% of the way. So even when people are like, oh, come on, you shouldn't be so focused on your career. It's about time you had children. And in my head, I'm just like, do you know how hard we're trying to have another child? It would just fill me with rage. But I was able to just like vent that on my husband, and he would help me come through it. Yeah, but that too
Yeah.
was another very big part, just the societal expectations and insensitive comments people would make without knowing the struggle. So maybe if I was more open about the struggle, I wouldn't have had to deal with those insensitive comments. So maybe that was a way I could have made it easier on myself.
Right. Artie Dote asks, "Hey Tick, what's your take on bringing up kids with the way the world is turning?" And I think a lot of people who are thinking about being parents have that question nowadays with the way the world is going. What's your take on bringing up kids in this environment that we live in?
Um, there are so many ways to interpret that question, but I think um, an answer that could work regardless of your perspective.
I think we've lost Tick for a while. Sorry, I think we lost you for a while. So can you go back to saying what you were saying at the start of your answer?
Um, I think regardless of the perspective that you're coming from, what would be helpful to think about is um, how do I make sure that I'm staying open in my mind and willing to adapt? Because just from seeing how I have been in the past 10 years as a parent, if if I learned anything, if I could say one thing, it is that I need to keep adapting. Nothing stays the same. So with the world changing, that really is what I'm going to keep as my constant reminder, that I need to be open to change myself, like changing in my own being, to allow me to be the parent that my child needs me to be, not the parent that I think I should be. And that, I'm hoping, will allow me to continue to be a good mother.
That's a very good point. Thanks. I'm going to take that away as well.